Hello everyone. In this tutorial, we are going to go over the process of how we can design a palm tree. So basically the first things we are going to do is that we're going to delete these three elements because we're not going to be using them. So select them and press delete on the keyboard. Then we want to add a single vertex. So Shift A, then mesh, and then single vert and select add single vert. If you don't see the single vert on the menu, it means that you need to activate an add-on. So basically to activate that add-on, you go to edit, preference, and you want to make sure the extra object add-on is enabled. So basically it's this one here. You want to make sure that it's ticked. So it's add mesh extra objects. Once that's enabled, you should be able to see the single vert option here. So basically you want to go ahead and add the single vert. Then you want to go and press 1, kind of like going into 2D, and we want to start work with this vertex. So basically once we add when we add the vertex, we are in edit mode. So we can go ahead and start extruding. What you want to do is that we want to basically have our trunk, the trunk of our palm tree. So we want to go E, extrude once, and another time, 3, 4, about 5 times to have some kind of curve. This curve is going to be our trunk basically. If you don't like the shape of the curve, you can go ahead and try another time. The idea is that this is going to be our trunk. So basically a palm tree, as we have seen, has some curve to it, at least to the trunk. So we want to try to model that here using this curve. So basically, I think this is good enough. Once we have that, we want to get out of edit mode by pressing tab. We want to make sure we're in object mode, and then we want to right click and convert this object, this mesh we have, to a curve. So once we have converted this object to a curve, we can see that we have a new icon appearing on this menu here we have on the right side of the screen. So we want to go ahead and click on that. It's the object data properties. So there we want to go under the geometry tab and modify this setting. So we have the depth and the resolution. We want to set the depth to something like 0.1 and the resolution to 2. So you see that we are giving some bulk to our trunk here. Once we did that, we want to go into edit mode again, select the top vertex and enable proportional editing. So we enable proportional editing either by pressing O on the keyboard or by using this icon. And then we want to use Alt S to basically scale down this part of the branch or the trunk to make it look like the trunk basically. So we can increase the affected area of our scaling by using the wheel, so the mouse wheel. So we can wheel down to decrease the area or wheel up to increase the area here to have some kind of shape like this. After doing that, we want to reposition the cursor. So basically the cursor is this object you see here, or not the object, or this visual you see here. We want to press Shift S on the keyboard and set the cursor to selected. Basically the cursor is where our element are spawned. So basically we want to add a plane on top of the trunk at that position. Once we move the cursor to that vertex, we want to make sure that we're in object mode, and then by pressing tab, so we press tab and we go to object mode, then we press Shift A and add a plane. and we see that our plane is spawned at the top of the trunk. That's why we change the cursor position. After that, once we add the plane, we want to go to top view mode, and we go to top view mode by pressing 7 on the keyboard, not on the keyboard, on the numpad, sorry. So you press 7 on the numpad, and that will take you to the top view. So basically you're going to see the design from the top. And we want to use X-ray mode here. So basically we can select X-ray to be more exact, basically. So we want to scale this plane to fit the top of the trunk. So here we have selected the plane, and then we use S to scale it down. And since we have X-ray enabled, we can see that it fits the top of the trunk. We want to go about this much. Then we can enable or disable the X-ray when we need it by pressing this icon here. So then we want to go into edit mode, and we want to go into edge select mode because we want to be working with edges. So basically when we go into edit mode, we have three modes. We have the vertex mode, the edge mode, and the face mode. Now we want to select the edge mode. So by pressing number 2 on the keyboard, not the numpad, the keyboard, and also by selecting or using this menu here to change between vertex, edge, and the face select. So here we want the edge. We choose this edge here, and basically we want to press G. First, we want to make sure that proportional editing is off because we are not using it for the moment. Then we want to press G here, and then we want to press Y to limit our movement to the Y axis, and we want to bring this about this much. So this is going to be our palm leaf. So about around 1.5 squares. Once we did that, we want to go here, select this edge, and then we want to press S and scale in, basically to taper it, to make it look more like a leaf. So in order to scale in, basically we press S, we select this edge, we press S, we go inward for scaling in and outward for scaling out. Here we want to go inward, so we're going to scale it down. Now the next step we want to do is that we want to work on the smaller leaves. So in order to do that, we're going to go into edit mode and select all this leaf here. And we do that by selecting any part of the leaf and pressing A. So we press A, then we want to copy it. So we're going to do Shift D to have a copy of that branch or leaf. Once we did that, we want to scale this part. So we're going to press S and X. It's because we want to scale it on the X axis. So here we scale it on the X axis. Then what we want to do is that we want to add some loop cuts to this leaf. Basically, this is going to be our smaller leaves. So we want to go and Control R, place the cursor or the mouse over the leaf and scroll up until we have 3 loop cuts here. So here you see we have 3 loop cuts, 1, 2, 3. Once we added the loop cuts, we want to scale the whole leaf down by around 40%. So basically we want to press A, or we don't want to press A here because we only want to scale this leaf. So what we want to do is we want to select part of the leaf, and then we want to press L. So we press L, and this way we can select only the connected part, the linked part. Basically, L stands for linked. So we're going to be selecting everything that's linked to this edge or to this part of the object we have selected. So basically, we want to scale this by around 40%. So S and then 0.6. We can be exact, or we can basically do it by hand. I mean, basically when we want to scale with 0.6 means that we want to scale it down by 40%. So S and then 0.6 to have this shape. And once we have done that, we want to pick the middle edge. So the middle edge is this one. We should be working in edge mode here. You see that edge mode is selected. And we want to turn on proportional editing here. So like just like before. And then we want to make sure that we want to press G here and make sure that the circle is only around the leaf, because we don't want it to affect the other part of the object. We just want the circle to be around the leaf here. So basically now what we are going to do is that we want to scale this part a little bit. So we don't want to press G, basically we want to press S. We want to scale this part a little bit by this much. Then we want to turn off proportional editing, and we want to select the whole leaf by pressing L, sorry, and then scaling around the y-axis, scaling it a little bit higher. Then what we want to do is that we want to select the top edge, this edge, and we want to scale it down. And we want to do the same thing for this edge, basically. The idea is to have some kind of leaf shape. So we want to scale down these parts a bit. I think that's enough. Then what we want to do is we want to select the whole leaf again. And here we want to scale it down by around quite a lot. We want to have the size to be around 30 centimeters basically. And 30 centimeters is basically three of these cubes. So each one of these cubes is about 10 centimeters. So this is all we need to do to have our smaller leaf here. So basically we have our smaller leaves now. Now what we want to do is that we want to place the leaf. So basically we want to press G to move it, and we want to reposition our viewport here a little bit. So we want to refocus on our trunk and main branch here. If basically we do that by pressing Shift and clicking, so Shift plus middle mouse, and that's how we move our viewport here. So Shift, the middle mouse, as you can see on the screencast key. So now what we want to do is that we want to select this leaf, and then we want to rotate it by 45 minus. So basically R45 and then minus. So rotate it by minus 45 degree. And then you want to press G again and place it somewhere here. And once we did that, we want to make around about some copies we want to fill the whole, basically this whole leaf, we want to fill it with these smaller ones. Once we placed the leaf here, we want to make some copies using Shift D. So we want to make sure the whole leaf is selected, and then press Shift D to duplicate and move it a little bit. And with each copy, we want to scale this leaf a little bit higher. We want to scale it a little bit bigger, and we want to basically rotate it closer to the main branch. So basically Shift D and then scale a little bit and then rotate it toward the main branch. So Shift D, scale a little bit and then rotate it. And basically, if you want to make sure that you have more control over scaling, you can press Shift, or sorry, you can press S for scaling and then Shift so that your increments are smaller. Same goes for rotation. If you press R and then Shift, you can see that our rotation and scaling is more controlled. So basically, we want to keep doing this until about the middle of the branch, or a little bit more than that. So Shift D, S, and then Shift to scale a little bit, then rotate it some more. Basically, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We want to have about 15 to 18 of these smaller ones. So Shift D, again, S, Shift and scale and rotate. Shift D, S, and rotate a little bit. And maybe about this point, what we want to do is now we want to start scaling down basically. So Shift D, we want to scale it down, and but we want to still keep rotating it. And again, it's a matter of personal taste. You can have different design, different ways of having design. Basically, the idea is to have some kind of variation to make it look like more natural. So Shift D, and then now we want to scale it down and rotate a bit. Then Shift D, scale it down and rotate. Shift D, rotate, scale it down. Basically, up until we reach the end of our branch here. Let's scale it down, rotate. Maybe one more, or one smaller one, and rotate. I think that looks pretty good here. So once we have done that, we want to basically symmetrize, basically. So we are not going to repeat the same process for the other side. Basically, what we're going to do is that we're going to basically draw a box around all the object to select everything, and then we want to go into face select mode and unselect the main branch by pressing Shift and clicking it. And then once we do that, we see that only the smaller leaves are selected. Once we have selected those smaller leaves, we want to press F3 and we want to search for symmetrize. So here you can see symmetrize, and then you want to open up this smaller menu here and change the direction to go from plus X to minus X. And once you do that, we have our branch here. Once we do that, we want to go back into edit mode if we exited it. And we want to select the main branch. And we want to still make sure we're in face mode here. And then we want to add 11 loop cuts. So Control R, place the mouse somewhere around the branch, and then use the mouse wheel to increase the number of loop cuts. You can click and then make sure that in the menu that appears you have about 10, 11, or 12 basically loop cuts. And once we did that, we want to select one of the edges or let's say the vertices around the middle. So basically you want to make sure that we are in vertex select mode. So we select one of the vertices along the middle, let's say this one, and then we press 3 to go in to see this from the side. Now we want to enable proportional editing, so by pressing O on the keyboard, so you see that it turns on here, and we want to raise this vertex a little bit, so we want to press G, and then we want to do that along the Z axis here, and we want to also make sure that the area affected is the whole branch. So we want to make sure that the circle is bigger or just about the size of the branch, something like this. And you can increase this area, like we said before, by using the mouse wheel down or wheel up. Now, after we have done that, we want to select this time a vertex near the front, go back, press 3, and look it from the side, and then this time we want to bring it lower, and we want to make sure we are moving along the z-axis. So we do that by pressing Z. So basically this gives a nice curve to our leaf. After we do that, we want to go back to top view, so we do press 7 on the numpad. Then we draw a box with the left mouse around the whole branch, and we want to scale this on the x-axis. You want to make it thinner basically. So S, X to scale it down. Once we do that, we can basically turn off proportional editing. And now what we want to do is that we want to place our other branches. So here we want to go press 3 to look at it from the side. You want to select the leaf and press R and 30 to rotate this by about 30 degrees basically, or exactly 30 degrees. And then we want to get back to top view, so 7. And here we want to make multiple copies of this branch. And here we want to be using Alt D and make sure that we are not using Shift D, because we want to Alt D stands for link duplicate. This is going to make it easier for us to add material to the branch. So Alt D, and then we want to press R and make several copies of the branch. So Alt D, then R and rotate. Alt D, R and rotate. Alt D, and then rotate. And then make some adjustment to make sure we have an interesting design. So basically, this is our leaves now. Once we do that, we want to continue making other copies of the branch. We want to go back to front or side view, then selecting one of the branch, then Alt D, and then we want to bring it lower. So R, and bring it lower. Then we want to get back to top view, and then here we want to scale it down. Then we want to get back to top view here by pressing 7 again on the numpad, and we want to scale down the leaf. And then we want to Alt D again and rotate to fill the gaps. So Alt D and rotate to fill this gap, and let's not forget to select this one too again, the original one, and rotate it. So Alt D, rotate to fill the gap, and one more time. So once we added these smaller leaves, we want to go back and select the bigger ones, and then again Alt D, and then we want to rotate them higher, and then we want to look back from the top and make some copies. So Alt D, basically we want to make sure we're filling the gaps. So here are the same way we did with the smaller leaves or the smaller branches. We want to do the same thing but with the bigger one. So Alt D, rotate, Alt D, rotate, Alt D, and rotate. And basically that's all you want to do for the branches. Then what we can do here is to add some variation. Basically we want to basically maybe scale some of these branches or leaves higher or slow or lower. So basically the idea is to have some variation. We can select one of these and press R twice to add some rotation. And like I was saying, basically the idea is to have some variation. So R twice and adding some fine adjustment basically. So scaling down, adding some kind of rotation and scaling up. So this is it for the branches. Now what we want to do is that we want to select all the branches and then shift select the trunk, then Control P and select object. This way we have parented basically the branches to the trunk, or we have connected them to the trunk. So now when we move the trunk, the whole object moves as one object. But when you take one of the branches, you see that it's kind of connected to the trunk. So here we want to be working a little bit on the base. So we want to go into edit mode, select these two vertices. So shift select these two vertices, either draw a box around them or select one and then shift and select the other. And then right click and subdivide to add a new vertex. Then make sure that the pivot point is set to individual origins here. And then basically what we want to do is we want to kind of straighten the base. So basically we want to bring it a little bit lower and to the right and look at it from different angles. We see that the base is almost straight. We want to bring it kind of lower along the z-axis. And then what we want to do, let's bring it a little bit lower again, make sure the base is straight. And then here what we want to do is we want to select the first vertex and then Alt S and scale it a bit. And then we see that this is kind of a little bit maybe too big. Then we want to maybe grab it a little bit and bring it lower around the z-axis. And basically the idea is to place it in some kind of terrain where, and this would basically be modeling the roots kind of the palm tree. Now we can go into material mode. Basically you can press Z and then go to material preview or use this menu here to change between different previews. And we want to select the trunk and we want to give it some material. So go to the material tab here, press new, and we want to give it some kind of brown color, more like a dark brown color. And you want to set the roughness here to full. Then you want to select one of the branch. Here we want to give it another material like green. I think that looks good. And basically that's all we need to do to have some kind of palm tree. So now that we are done with the modeling and adding the material, I'm going to go over some basic setup concerning lighting and rendering. So we want to make sure that the cursor is placed at the word origin now. So we're going to do Shift S and press 1 or select cursor toward origin here to spawn a plane at that location. So Shift A, then mesh, then plane. And then we want to scale this plane by about 10 times. And then we want to select this edge here. So we need to go into edit mode and edge select this edge, and then E and Z and extrude. Then I'm going to go back and select the edge again, and then this time we want to bevel, so we're going to do Control B here and basically bevel. So here we can increase the loop cuts by using our mouse wheel. Then we click to confirm. We tab out of edit mode to object mode and right click and shade smooth. So we have what is called an infinity background here that's gonna serve for rendering purposes. Then the color, the background is up to you. So we can preferably select a darker material so that the palm tree is more like apparent. So let's maybe go with maybe light, maybe blue, a darker blue, something to make basically the palm tree more visible. Again, this depends on your taste. So, and then we are going to go ahead and work on adding some lights here. We can start by adding a sunlight. So we can go to render view here. You notice that it's pretty dark here. So we can Shift A, go to light and add a sunlight. So this is some kind of, you can see the shadows. In addition, you can add also some area lights here. So Shift A and add some area light. So light, area light here. We can G, Z and bring it higher. And maybe go into top view and make sure that the light is emitting on top of the palm tree here. You can make this area bigger. And then here you can increase the power, maybe 50. You can play with this setting depending on how you want your scene to look like. You can change the colors, maybe give it a more warmer color here, and maybe increase a little bit more. You can then Shift D here and rotate around the y-axis by around 45 degree, and then G and place the light here to have lights from different angles. Again, you can do it for the other side. So basically Shift D here, R, Y, and 45 by this time minus to make it shine from the other side, and then G, X, and maybe bring it a little bit to this side, and then G and Z to bring it higher. Another useful type of lighting is what they call a backlight, basically. So you can again Shift D, bring this light this side and increase it by maybe, let's have it something like 500, and maybe rotate it a bit along the x-axis. So basically that's for our basic light setup. We can get much more creative depending on what you want to do. I think a light on the other side would be also nice. So Shift D, R, and maybe 180 here along the Z-axis. Bring it a little bit here and make sure it's shining on the pollen tree. Now the next step is to render this tree. We can of course make the scene even more lighter, more bright, and that's about it for lighting. So now we want to add a camera, and a camera is used to render and have it in some kind of format. Like you can have an animation, you can have a picture. So basically Shift A and add a camera. By pressing 0, we go into a camera. So basically if we render now, that's what we're gonna get. So we wanna go and press N and then go to view here. And then we wanna make sure we lock the camera to view. So now when we move, the camera is gonna move. So this way we wouldn't have to place the camera manually. So basically the camera is gonna see what you are seeing. Basically it's what we see around this box. Again, you can press N to hide the menu and basically choose the angle you want to see the palm tree from, or to render the palm tree. Once you are satisfied with your camera angle, you can go ahead and go to render or press F12 to render this as an image. So basically render image, and you'll have your render, and then you're gonna have to save it. And basically these are also, you can choose the location, the file format. Basically here is set to PNG. You can go here and select, for example, to save it on your desktop or any other folders basically. So that's about it for this tutorial. Hope you enjoyed it and hope to see you in other ones. Thanks for watching and happy blendering.